Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Noctilucant channel. It's once again been a while since I've done one of these videos. But, about 3 weeks ago, Arvo Zylo from No Part of It Records, he sent me a unsolicited surprise box of CDs, and now, I guess I have to do a collection update video. So, if you end up enjoying this video, go check out No Part of It Records and their Bandcamp site. You can get a bunch of cool shit for, like, under $10 in a lot of cases, and perhaps some of the CDs I'm going to talk about right now will interest you too. But before we get into the actual music, we're going to be going back to drinking beers during these videos too. So we have, this is going to be really interesting. This is the ice cream waffle pastry stout from Untitled Art. Man, oh man, has beer gotten interesting in the recent years. So yeah, let's go, man. It's going to be cool. Cheers, everybody. Happy Christmas or whatever. Wow. That tastes like, well, ice cream and waffles. That's boozy, liquid ice cream and waffles. That's, wow. Untitled Art fucking does it again, man. Unbelievable. So, well then, the real reason why you came for these videos, I suppose, is, to learn about some new Dark Ambient and related music, right? And that's what we do here. So up first and already in the CD player is Walter Campbell and his album Walter Ego. Yeah, interesting title, I suppose, right? So what I know about Walter Campbell is all on the back of the CD. Here are these little, most No Part of It Records albums have little mini bios. So it seems Walter Campbell's musical adventures go back to the mid-90s, playing in goth, industrial, and punk bands, and then about 6, 7, 8 years ago he got into experimental music, and nowadays he's more into composing experimental music, and that is exactly what you get on Walter Ego. It's experimental. I mean, there's drone, there's industrial characteristics, there's you know, a lot of cosmic space synth, I guess, kind of, and then just indescribably weird shit. The bio mentions Coil and Nurse with Wounds, so before I toss this in the CD player, I was really excited, because I mean, you get a comparison to those bands, like, those are like, you know, the kings of the whole experimental and old school industrial scene, in my opinion, for our experimental music scene. But, yeah, it's cool, it's a cool city, but I think my biggest discrepancy with this is that it sounds like it's very, very improvised. Like, it just, I don't know, it doesn't sound like there was a lot of post-editing done on it, which I think it would have benefited from, because there's some interesting ideas expressed, but it just sounds like it was almost recorded in like a, I don't know, sort of a live, yeah, it just sounds improvised, I guess. And that's the only thing I can really put into perspective. It just sounds improvised, which isn't a bad thing, but yeah, like I said, I would have definitely benefited from a little more depth, a little more time spent with it. But if I'm completely wrong in my guess here, then I guess I'm gonna make myself look like an asshole or whatever, and not do the CD justice. But yeah, definitely. Definitely, I can take I think the comparison, the Coil and Nurse with Wound, is justified. It's not as good. That's the problem. It's just it's nowhere near comes to those bands' classic albums or that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's kind of disappointing in that sense, but still interesting if you're into really diverse and experimental music that's anywhere from dark ambient, drone, to industrial, level with noisy stuff here, and just, yeah, just that cosmic space synth, I guess, would be the best way to also kind of round up all the taste on this city. So yeah, Walter Campbell and Walter Ego. Alright, so we're moving on, and now we're going to talk about Blood Rhythms and their album Horrorpilation. And I have to start off this review by saying, I saw the title of that and I was like, what is a pillation? And I looked it up in dictionary.com, and it's not actually a real word, so don't ask me what a horrorpilation is, I guess, but for this version of Blood Rhythms, it's both Arvo Zylo and an artist I was not familiar with at all until getting this album, and her name is Leslie Keffer. And together they make a very, very, very drone-based album with, I guess, some minimal experimentation and noise characteristics, which is kind of what you'd expect from Blood Rhythms, if you remember the earlier album I mentioned, which was called The Universe Spilling Out of a Spider's Baubles. It's very minimal drone, and it's very, very droney. Like, this is stuff that you'd... I feel like it wouldn't be kind of an album you could put on and get much, like, normal, like... I don't know. What's the word I'm trying to say? I don't know. It's a very drony album. It's the kind of album you'd probably want to sleep on or nap on or something like that. And I think it's one of those albums where, like, if you're a little kooky in the mind too and doing something, it can definitely enhance that little high you got going on. Yeah. So yeah, very drony stuff, but very minimal and in a lot of ways not as. I mean, I guess I like, with drone music, I like to see a little bit of development throughout the music, and this is so minimal, it almost, I'm not saying they did this, but to me it almost sounds like they're just like holding down a single key on the synthesizer and just stretching it out for several minutes, but it's just so minimal that that's the way it sounds to me a lot of times. So, yeah, on the front cover we have, I wish I had that glare from the window, but I guess that's what's happening today. We have one of the infamous and interesting collages that often grace the covers and inserts of No Part of It records. And yeah, definitely an interesting album, but as you can maybe hear in the background, just pretty minimal and very repetitive, but definitely something you can you know, get into if you just need like a sleeping aid or just something to maybe help with when you need to chill out and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Blood Rhythms. Alright, moving on, we're going to talk about Leslie Keffer and her album, Perceive. So, probably out of this bunch of albums that I got from No Part of It, this was the one that really stood out the most for me, and I really like this album. I mean, this is, once again, you know, sort of experimental dark ambient drone with sort of slowly rising experimental noisy electronics, and it's done really, really well. It's just... the evolutions of sound throughout this album and just like the overall atmosphere is just really deep and really immersive, and it's just really well done. Stuff like this can sometimes be a little bit hard to get into because it is basically like dark ambient industrial music, but it's really well done, and I gotta say, if like you're never really got into that kind of stuff, it's definitely an album I would recommend that could perhaps get you into that sort of more dark ambient industrial hybrid style. But yeah, it just flows really well. All the sounds and just the ambient drones are just really good, really immersive, really atmospheric, and just really great album. I was really surprised. So yeah, there's the artwork once again real quick, and the back cover. And then on the inside we have what I would assume is a picture of Leslie herself. So yeah, Leslie Keffer, Perceiver. Really cool. Check it out. Okay, well, up next is Xerex and their album Meets Dragula. It's important right now that I read the bio on the back of this CD before I continue. Yeah. So, Xerex is an anonymous musical project by brothers Karl and Jan from rural, yes, Germany. They're conjoined twins who also happen to have been grown in a petri dish as elderly mathematicians in 1972. Okay, makes sense. Xerex Meets Dracula is their first invisible story in the spirit of choose-your-own-adventure novels. This is an extended reissue of their extremely limited edition LP due to popular demand. Well, this one definitely flew over my head when it was originally released, but I'm just still, the bio and the artwork is something to behold, I would say. Yeah, so, what do we got here? Apparently two human petri dish creatures made some sort of, I guess, again, like sort of experimental dark ambient drones. It seems to be the theme of this collection update so far, right? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's really diverse and all over the place, so I guess maybe it'd be safer just to call it general experimental music, but yeah, interesting. It has, guess, themes of old vampire movies or something. It starts out with a sample from one of the old Bela Lugosi horror films from the 30s or 30s, I believe. Yeah, it starts out with that and then just goes into just kooky all over the place. Yeah, experimental music, that's the best way to describe it. Some noisier parts, some dronier parts, but yeah, interesting stuff. So, Xerax meets Draken. Alright, we're moving on. Now we come to Illusion of Safety and Zev, self-titled album, I'm assuming. Illusion of Safety and Zev. I gotta be honest, when I got this CD, I had never heard of Illusion of Safety. But apparently this is an old school, like, dark ambient and experimental industrial project that has roots that go all the way back to, like, 1983. I was like, how did I overlook that one? I don't know, really weird. And so it's definitely something I got to investigate further and see, because yeah, a lot of people were saying like that. This was some influential stuff back in the day, so yeah, like the Dark Ambient guy does no shit after all. So then we also have Zev, and Zev, of course, is a experimental musician who has been active since, I believe, 1981, and just pretty well-known figure in the scene. He's mostly known as a percussionist who makes lots of like industrial beats and just, you know, experimental music. Over the years, he has had an unbelievable amount of albums and collaborations, all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, a few years ago, he passed away at the age of 66, but definitely an icon of the, you know, post-industrial scenes, you know, starting up in the early 80s. So this is a collaboration between Illusion of Safety and Zev. A little bit of a story. It seemed like this album was supposed to have been released a few years ago already, but for some reason it ended up on labels that didn't do shit right, and the release kept falling through basically. So then No Part of It Records eventually released it. So yeah. Once again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but once again we're pretty much dealing with experimental dark ambient drone, some minimal electronics, some noisy bits, but yeah, cool stuff, man. You know, it's no masterpiece, and I have no idea you know what Illusion of Safety normally sounds like, and Zev I'm only kind of partially familiar with. I mostly just know him by name and from some of the collaborations he's done over the years. I honestly don't think I've ever heard like his own solo recordings before. So definitely something to follow up with this album. So there's the front cover. I'm sure all of this stuff is like, I mean, not this album in particular, but I'm sure like there's recordings from both of these projects on Spotify, so something I'll definitely be checking out later. So yeah, Illusion of Safety and Zev. Alright, well, before we close out this collection update, let's talk about a few more items I've, well, not necessarily bought in recent times, but just haven't talked about yet. So, I got this album from Ontario Blue, which is called Shine, probably about a year and a half ago, I would have to say. I'd never heard of this project until Devin from the Dark Ambient project Deviant. We were talking on the phone one day, and he was like, have you ever heard Ontario Blue? And I don't remember exactly what he said now, but he's like, definitely check it out. It's a really good album, he said. And I think right after we got off the phone, I went to Discogs, found a copy for like $8, and I was like, okay, cool, let's see what this ends up being. So Ontario Blue ended up being a project from Stefan Pennick, who some of you may know from the project Endura, which is a UK sort of dark ambient, dark wave, ritualistic project, which I have not heard in many, many years. I remember like back in like the Napster days, like downloading some of their stuff and being like, cool, I should buy this. But here we are now, 22 years later, I still don't own any Endura stuff, but I got some Ontario Blue stuff to talk about. And I guess the best way to describe this album would be to call this something like neoclassical dark wave with sort of a multicultural sort of ethnic vibe to it, I guess. That's a hell of a mouthful of things to say there, but yeah, there's a lot of different like world music sort of traits in this album, and yeah, it's dark wave, neoclassical. very 90s sounding. This repress is from 1998, but it was originally self-released cassette in 1996. This was re-released by Fluttering Dragon Records from Poland, which had a lot of really cool like dark ambient, industrial, ritualistic neo-folk projects throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s, but the label folded a long time ago. But yeah, this is really cool stuff, very diverse, and yeah, very 90s sounding, that's for sure. This reminds me of stuff like Dead Can Dance, Ild Frost, In My Rosary, trying to think, maybe like Vaughn from Norway, Mortis's side project, maybe a little bit like that. Yeah, really very 90s sounding. Like, I think if you pick this album up or if you just go on YouTube and listen to it, you're gonna be like, well, that sounds really 90s. It's gonna instantly like flood your brain with like projects you heard back then or, you know, still have nowadays. But cool album. I really liked it. Thank you again, Dev, for you know, recommending this to me. This project had 3 releases from 1996 until 2001, and although I don't know much about Endura, I'm assuming he has continued on with that over the years. So yeah, cool little booklet here, and yeah, cool little record. Definitely worth hunting down, especially if you're into that, you know, 90s sounding, you know, world music, dark ambient, dark wave, neoclassical kind of stuff. I really enjoyed this a lot. So yeah, Ontario Blue, shine. Alright, one more I think, and this is gonna be an album I bought kind of right around that time when the Reverse Alignment label was kind of calling it quits and put a sale on a bunch of their inventory. So I picked this up. This is Hoarfrost and their album Anima Mundi. So this is a very, very dark, ritualistic album that, in a way, kind of sounds like if you took the old Wicker Man movie from 1970 and sort of ran it through like a dark ambient filter base. That's the best way I could describe it. There's lots of like ritualistic singing, some like folky, like string instrument parts, and there's this really strong ritualistic part, especially like the female voice just sort of like howling. It sounds like she's just like possessed by evil or something, or just, you know, going through this massive ritual. It's really fucking cool. I mean, just really possessed and really dark sound, and it's really, really cool, and it just has to be really experienced firsthand to really understand how cool it is, and just how like just massive sounding it is. I don't know that I've ever heard a ritualistic dark ambient CD that sounds exactly like this. I mean, Chrono Barathre from Russia is certainly close, but they still have, the style is different. This is more folky sounding, whereas Chrono Barathre just sounds like the depths of hell opening up and conjuring, kind of pulling you down in there or something. Yeah, but this is more folky sound, but still really dark and ominous sounding, very atmospheric, and really with that sort of like witchy, you know, occult 70s movie kind of vibe to it. Yeah, I mean, I really like this album a lot, and it's a bit of a shame I haven't bought more from this project, because I really like everything they've put out over the years. But yeah, Anima Mundi is definitely worth hunting down. Great artwork, of course, too, and just a really interesting project, well worth looking up. So yeah, Hoarfrost. God damn, that was good. Alright, I lied. One more dark ambient album to talk about in this collection update here. So, this album I actually got a couple years ago. I had meant to talk about it when I first started Interesting Images. I don't know, got pushed aside or whatever, because I was not planning things out well. So we're going to talk about the one and only album from Savvaste Ayenam, which is called Sink Kalesa, if I'm saying it right. Savvaste Ayenam was a project from Peter Anderson from Raison d'Etre, and of course, you know, like 20 other dark ambient experimental projects throughout the 90s and even into the 2000s. This is one of his more underrated projects, as it's kind of sort of a ritualistic, tribal sounding dark ambient experimental music. In the early 90s, he released 2 demo tapes with this project, and then this album was released in 1998. And This is either a collection of those demos or it's a re-recording of those demos. I'm not 100% sure. Doesn't really indicate in the booklet. But yeah, this is very interesting. Definitely as far as like, you know, Peter Anderson's project goes, it's one of his more sort of active sounding. There's a lot of percussion, ritualistic elements, and like I said, kind of tribal-ish kind of vibe to a lot of the percussion too. Really, really diverse and really kind of not easy to really pin down, because I don't know that I've ever heard anything exactly like this before. Again, I think there's also some kind of like dark wave and you know, very 90s. There's dark wave and gothic kind of feels this stuff too. But I don't know. I can't really think of an artist that really immediately reminds me of this stuff. But definitely, if you're into more ritualistic and tribal sounding dark ambient, I know that the tribal thing is not really common, but I think Sebastianum was probably the first dark ambient project to use that sort of like tribal percussion, stuff like that, which of course, like, it was a few years later, Sephiroth from Sweden as well would become really famous for blending dark ambient, ritualistic, tribal percussion to the recording. So yeah, this isn't no masterpiece, but you can usually find it for like under $10 on Discogs, so look it up if you're curious to hear another Peter Anderson project or just something a little bit different from the usual dark ambient formula. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me here on the Noctilucant channel, guys. My name is Joe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.